welcome to the Real CP Show. I'm your host, CP. And today's topic, the invasion and destabilization of Venezuela by U.S. controllers entities, the brilliancy and hypocrisy. And they know that many don't know the games because these supremacist people, they don't care about a person's emotions, right? It's irrelevant to them because they're about one, greediness, one, chaos, right? Keeping people off balance consistently, right? And again, playing the games. What do you mean by that? Yes. They're about playing the games, right? Destabilization consistently, hypocrisy consistently. And they know many people get into feelings, right? There are a couple of different topics, regardless, that get people in their feelings real fast. And supremacists knows this. That's why I always say supremacy or supremacists are the most awesome mental manipulation force that has ever existed. And today's topic, it's not going to be a long show whatsoever. I just kind of want to go over some things a little bit above just the surface-based part of it on that situation. See, the thing about it is that this system knows that quite a number of people do not know the power of history, right? See, because, it's like, say, for instance, certain sections of within Black Americanism are told, hey, you know what? Don't focus on the past. Focus on the future, as if the future doesn't come from the past. And then because of so much Black pain that's happened so many generations toward Black Americans, with small exceptions who see through the tactics that have been so ingrained with shameness and feeling inferior because of some bad things that has happened to Black Americans and still do by certain ones within certain parts of Paname's culture, and ones who want to be Anglo-like, and you got some tellers and fleers and personnel breaking border immigration laws left and right. I mean, there are so many lists going on toward Black Americans, right? Now, the one thing in common, besides various types of anti-Black Americanism, is they make sure not to forget about the past, right? But they'll tell Black Americans, y'all should get over the past. While again, talking about the past. That's like telling some George numbers of people, forget about what that bad Hitler man did, right? Forget about what he did. Or just pretend he loved him some Black Americans, right? Just pretend that Black Americans better not been in Germany, 1941, 1945, a couple years before that when he went and invaded Poland, right? The Black Americans better not been over there, right? But you got, let people tell it that Hitler, he just loved him some Black Americans too, right? Of course not. And you're talking about all these years later, right? You better not tell how numbers of George people forget about history. You better not tell what we call Native Americans, parentheses Native Americans, even though you had numbers of Anglo personnel that put their names on the roll, $2.50, $5, and then numbers of them call themselves Native Americans. Oh, we ain't gonna talk about that. But again, you got people telling Black Americans to get over the past and then some people within Paname's culture saying we ain't got anything to do with slavery and we ain't got anything to do with reparations. There's some other people that want to be like white adjacent and again tellers and fleers and all that kind of stuff. People got their little hands in thought pattern and what Black Americans have going through consistently, right? But they never tell the people that continually talk about their histories. You saw how this game goes, right? So let me go ahead and share my screen on this first situation. Oh, before I do that, let's hear some wisdom from the great Prince.
Don't be fooled by the internet. It's cool to get on the computer, but don't let the computer get on you. It's cool use the computer. Don't let the computer use you. You all saw the Matrix. There's a war going on. The battlefield's in the mind. And the prize is the soul. So be careful.
And you see what they did to the great prince, right? And by the way, because you got some food that try to tell Black Americans that they got no culture. Well, Prince was a Black American, by the way. So was Michael Jackson. And I mean, the list goes on, right? Aretha Franklin, Patti LaBelle. Those were those foods that try to tell Black Americans they have no history, while at the same time fleeing over to America. Okay, that's a whole different topic. So let's go ahead and share the screen on that. Uh-oh, wrong one, wrong button here. So let me go ahead and start this right here with this particular one. Give me a second, which one I want to show first? Give me one moment here. Which one I want to show first? Okay. I want to play this one first? Yes. All right. I'm just going to play this, a little bit of this. I'm utilizing this for fair uses doctrine. Today is December the 5th, 2026. And by the way, let's not forget, one of the things, again, that's going to be minimized is tomorrow, January 6th, right? With the insurrection that happened, 2021, when you had who again? 98, 99% of personnel that was sitting there doing insurrection toward the Capitol building, in Washington, was you to sit there and cripple this country to the smithereens for quite a long time. But how many of those Anglo anarchists was sitting there partying? Right? You see how the game goes, right? Let's go ahead and play.
This is CBS News special report. I'm Carissa Lawson in New York. The United States just attacked Venezuela's capital, hitting military facilities in the country. President Trump ordered this operation. There were multiple explosions in Caracas starting at around 2 a.m. local time. You can see the video here coming in. It shows low-flying aircraft in the city. This is the first U.S. military attack within the country. President Trump is targeting the South American nation over its authoritarian leader, Nicolas Maduro, and his alleged ties to drug cartels. It follows months of military buildup in the region. The strikes come just hours after Maduro had said he was open to negotiations with the U.S. Let's go right to CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand. She's traveling with the president in West Palm Beach, Florida. And Natalie, what are we hearing from the Trump administration right now?
Well, as of this hour, sources are telling CBS News that Trump administration officials are aware of these reports of explosions and aircraft. No immediate response from the White House, but we've also learned per U.S. officials that President Trump ordered strikes on sites inside Venezuela, including military facilities. This, of course, comes as the administration has escalated its campaign against the regime of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro.
And by the way, where's all that? Where's the pan-Hispanicism at on this? You know how they try to tell Black Americans, hey, y'all being divisive, the ones that know better, the ones that see through the games, and say, wait a minute now, it's a little bit better to delineate from tellers and fleers who have also the nerve to talk about Black Americans, right? But they fled, right, to the United States, right? Because Black Americans ain't fleeing. You see how this game goes, right? And so the minute that a few extra Black Americans saying, no, okay, we're good now and that, y'all do your thing, whatever y'all do, y'all little, tribalism that you ran from, you came to the United States and you still practice tribalism in America, right? You practice tribalism also extreme in various parts of Africa, but Black Americans are told to, you got to get with your brothers and sisters in Africa. You say, which part of Africa? Africa is made up of 50-some plus countries and hundreds of languages and hundreds of tribes and stuff like that. How many practice their own tribalism, right? Even in the United States, you have how many numbers of African immigration type personnel who don't even associate with each other, right? But they're not told why y'all being divisive, to each other. See how the game goes, right? But they really do think Black Americans so stupid. Not just these flids and tethers, but I'm talking about various other people, right? You got people getting government assistance, resources, and things like this, putting various types of businesses in predominantly Black neighborhoods, stuff like that. They have been given resources, but at the same time, when you say, "Hey, what about reparations of Black Americans for centuries of Black pain?" Well, we ain't got no money. You see how the insulting stuff goes, right? Look at the situation going in Ukraine. Billions of dollars in resources given to Ukraine, right? How much of those resources went missing? How many times numbers of Ukrainians have fled from Ukraine, right? Right? But the concerns talking about Black pain and the consistently anti-American Black racial racism, terrorism that goes on right now toward Black Americans. There's not a week that goes by that there's not several examples of Black Americans getting racially terrorized, anti-Black American terrorized. But at the same time, right? Yeah, well, get over the past. Why it's still happening? See, it's something that has been screwed off on a certain non-small percentage within Black Americanism to just consistently allow people to show blatant disrespect. While at the same time, right, the situation with the border break illegal immigrants, hey, Black Americans, show up for us. Immigration type personnel situations, the ones that are sitting there got their hand out, getting all kind of benefits and resources. But Trump is doing that. Oh my goodness, Black Americans, help us out, right? No different situation going in Venezuela right now. Oh, you best believe there are some people out there saying, "Hey, Black Americans, are you going to sit there and be pro Venezuela?" You see how this situation goes, right? But no one gives a freak about what Black Americans consistently keep going through, right? No, most don't, right? So the thing about it is, it's just like this situation right here. Give me a second. It's going to start in a second.
This reporter kept his cool when his storm coverage was interrupted.
Craig, I'm going to toss it back to you because we have a person who needs your help right now.
Hey. It happened live on MSNBC. Shaquille Brewster was reporting on Tropical Storm Ida from Gulfport, Mississippi. He and his crew caught the attention of someone driving by. This video shows a white pickup truck pull over right behind Brewster as he's reporting. A man gets out of the vehicle and starts running over to the crew.
A random person going around, I'm going to turn this way because, we deal with some people every once in a while. But
Brewster continues on with his report, but the man can be heard off camera yelling at the crew.
Going on for at least until a period of time in which they can...
The man eventually turns back to Brewster, who has to end the report.
Craig, I'm going to toss it back to you because we have a person who needs your help right now.
Okay, we just can pretend, right? We don't see that, right? But at the same time, Black Americans are supposed to be jumping up for everybody else's causes. You see something's really wrong, right? They have messed up again. Millions within American Blackism, with small exceptions, to sit there and not see through these tactics. Right? To sit there and have confidence and understand that Black Americans come from a powerful history. Right? We're not talking about numbers of lost ones. See, this is what society, they love trying to get Black Americans to focus on some of the lost ones. Right? On that. But not the powerful history of Black Americanism that nobody else could have went through and survived. Nobody could have survived centuries of what Black Americans have went through and are still going through. And still no reparations, while none of the other people get reparations, while other persons are getting hate crime laws and legislation, should we say, and policies toward them. But when Black Americans talk about, what about Black American pain? What about the anti-Black American racial racism terrorists going toward Black Americans? The number one group of people who have the most hate crimes put upon them as Black Americans, but don't have a hate crime law passed, but still expected to sit there and vote for one necessary political party and not the other, but still get no tangibles, while other people sitting there get tangibles who don't outvote Black Americans, besides certain ones in predominant culture. You see, you see how this looks. So let me go ahead and share my screen again, relating to that first particular video, right? Give me a second. One moment here. So it's like, oh my goodness, that bad regime, that Maduro person, oh my goodness, look what he did to his people, and the narco trafficking, the terrorism, drug narconess, terrorism that he's been doing, and no, we got to help. You got to help out, And he didn't want to change over, so we got to go in there to my controllers U.S. version, because there's global ones. We got to go in there and take over Venezuela and if, as a coup, and put the people we want in there, right? Give me a second here. Let me show you something. Give me one moment here, right? But at the same time, remember the hypocrisy part, right? Give me a second here. Make sure you can see that. Hello. Make sure my mute is off. Okay. Here's good. Okay. Give me a second here. What was that? Okay. Give me a second here. Make sure to maximize this. Okay. Make sure you can see that. Okay.
Tonight, the former president of Honduras, serving time in a U.S. prison, walking free after a pardon from President Donald Trump over the weekend. Juan Orlando Hernandez was serving a 45-year federal prison sentence after being convicted on drugs and weapons smuggling charges just last year. Word reaching his wife and adult children at their home in the country's capital.
Juan Orlando volverá, volverá.
On Truth Social, Mr. Trump saying Hernandez was treated very harshly and unfairly. On Sunday, defending the decision aboard Air Force One.
Well, I was asked by Honduras, many of the people of Honduras, they said it was a Biden setup. I don't mean Biden. Look, Biden didn't know he was alive, but it was the people that surround the Resolute desk, surround Biden when he was there, which was about very little time. And the people of Honduras really thought he was set up and it was a terrible thing. He was the president of the country. And they basically said he was a drug dealer because he was the president of the country. And they said it was a Biden administration setup. And I looked at the facts and I agreed with them.
The pardon drawing harsh criticisms on both sides of the aisle as tensions continue to ramp up between the U.S. and Venezuela, specifically its leader, Nicolas Maduro, who Trump is accused of leading a drug cartel. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana posting on X, why would we want to pardon this guy and then go after Maduro for running drugs into the United States? Lock up every drug runner. Don't understand why he is being pardoned. Democratic Virginia Senator Tim Kaine had this to say on CBS's Face the Nation.
He was the leader of one of the largest criminal enterprises that has ever been subject to a conviction in U.S. courts. And less than 1 year into a sentence, President Trump is pardoning him, suggesting that President Trump cares nothing about narco trafficking.
Do we see some hypocrisy in this situation? Give me a second here. Do we see some hypocrisy on this? No. Give me one moment here. My machine just went haywire somewhere. But I think we saw some hypocrisy on that situation, did we not? On that part of it? Give me a second here. My machine just went crazy in the background. So again, this is irritating, but you see some hypocrisy on that situation, on that. So Maduro, he's a narco this, drug narco this, but at the same time, the former president of Honduras sit there was convicted of being a major narco himself, but he was pardoned. Do you see the hypocrisy of this situation on that? Right? The hypocrisy is very real, people. So let me go ahead and share my screen again and start getting to some other good parts and stuff like that. Give me a second here. Now, you know what? Let me switch up for half a second. Now, the thing about it is, one of the other people that however controllers that they're trying to get into Iran. Oh my goodness, Iran, they're doing this to their people. You see how this, do you see some, should we say some coincidental type situations, right? To try to figure out how to get in certain other people's countries and things like that, right? You make sure you can see this. Give me a second here. Let me maximize that. So let me play this as well.
All right, a wave of demonstrations driven by Iran's worsening economic crisis has entered its 9th day as U.S. President Donald Trump renewed warnings of possible U.S. intervention. Fresh video circulating online showed demonstrations in Tehran and across several provinces, including Fars, Ilam, North Khorasan, and Semnan. Human rights groups say that demonstrations have now spread to 26 of Iran's 31 provinces since last week. At least 19 demonstrators and one member of the security forces have reportedly been killed. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, Trump warned that Iranian authorities would be hit very hard if the death toll rises further. He said, and I quote him here, "We are watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they are going to get hit very hard by the United States of America."
Give me a second here. Give me a second. I mean, this is some wild stuff right here. You see already, again, right? Okay, Iran is doing this. Okay, what are we going to do about Iran now? I mean, this is why, again, the controllers are brilliant. See, in this book, there's a book called Propaganda that was written around 1928 by a guy by the name of Edward Bernays. So that's almost 4 generations ago, almost. And I'm just going to read just a few sentences that still is relevant today. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. Right? So let me go ahead and share my screen again on this part, because see, Iran was also a type of the boogie country as well, right? So you check mark. I'm gonna get this in a little bit. Iraq, check mark that off a little bit. Well, the reasons for that? Oh my goodness, look what he's doing to Iraqi people, right? What's his name? So we talking about Osama bin Laden. What he do, right? You know what he's supposed to have done, right? Got to get him, stuff like that. Oh, do you got Saddam Hussein? Oh my goodness, what he do? Got to get him. You see how this goes, right? You start checking out situations. I mean, they're showing things right in front of people's faces, right? So let's see some for a second. What did look at this article right here. What are the charges against Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro? Right? Let's just see here. What are the charges against Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro? I was trying to make sure my mute is off too. Oh, my mute is good. Or mute off, should I say now? Okay. All right. Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores face criminal charges in the United States following President Trump's announcement earlier Saturday that the U.S. attacked Caracas and captured them. Maduro is appearing in federal court in New York on Monday. A new indictment unsealed in federal court in New York charged Maduro with narco-terrorism, conspiracy, cocaine importation, conspiracy, and weapons charges. Flores and other senior Venezuelan officials, including Maduro's son, also facing charges. This particular entity, in a post on this entity, wrote that Maduro and his wife will soon face the full wrath of American justice. That will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil and American courts. But then you ask the question, what about the racial racism, anti-American black terrorists that are permeating various parts of the U.S.? What about bringing them to justice? Huh? What about that? It gets very quiet, isn't it? Doesn't it? Right? I mean, give me a second here. Just give me a second. Let me sit there and show you something else. See, this system does not like people to see through the games, right? They don't like that whatsoever. Give me one moment. Give me one moment. Give me 1 second here. I want to play something here.
I don't believe this is happening. Only fools refuse to believe the truth.
What? Say that again?
I don't believe this is happening. Only fools refuse to believe the truth.
Yes. Yes. The system does not like people to see through the games, right? And putting emotions to the side, right? And seeing through with realityness, right? The system does not like that as whatsoever. So let me go ahead and share my screen again on this. Give me 1 second. So let's see here for a second. Now, I've kind of read to myself, as some people know what I'm talking about as well. Oh my goodness, you see Venezuela's in the streets, and even certain various parts of America, Venezuela's on the street, even though you look at the percentage demographics of Venezuelans in America, that's extremely smattering of minute, right? By the way. So the thing about it is they try to sit there and show some genericality of some Venezuelans. Oh, look, down with Maduro, right? But at the same time, I said earlier, the hypocrisy, but at the same time, super major drug, narco trafficking, however, would got his hands on wherever it is, was the president, the former president of Honduras, right? Was convicted and accused of doing all those kind of things, super drug trafficking, narco-ness. This is what he's convicted for, but he gets pardoned. But at the same time, Maduro is accused for basically the same similar situation, and Venezuela is getting invaded. Wonder why. Venezuela tops the 2025 oil reserve ranking. Does it not get more clear than this? When people sitting there and just salivatate on people's faces and say, don't worry about that. Do you see the insulting part of it? It's almost unlaughable, because it's not laughable. Venezuela tops the 2025 oil reserves ranking. Countries with the largest oil reserves. Venezuela, right? 303 billion barrels. Saudi Arabia, which is who again? Related to the U.S. allies. 267, right? Plus or minus billions of oil reserves, right? Billions of barrels. Who's the third? Iran. You see how this goes, right? And how you've heard the controllers have been sitting there trying to propagandize something dealing with Iran. Oh my goodness, Iran is doing this and Iran's doing that. And they might be having weapons of mass destruction and they're aiming at the U.S. Does that sound like familiarness? Also, people know what I'm talking about, right? And interesting, Venezuela has some of the largest oil reserve, right? And oh my goodness, Maduro sitting there being a major drug trafficker, narco type personnel. And look at this, they have the largest oil reserve. How clear do these people just do stuff right in people's faces and say, y'all don't get it? Oh, they never will get it anyway. Right? And again, Saudi Arabia, right? We started talking about who was it? Saddam Hussein, no, Osama bin Laden, right? Huh? He was accused of certain situations. Saddam Hussein was accused of situations, right? People bring up what happened on September 11th. People know I'm talking about on that situation. Oh, that person is from Saudi Arabia, right? But they got caught in Afghanistan, right? So that goes. And how many people have accused Saudi Arabia of doing this and doing that and been oppressive to their women and doing this and doing that and stuff like this, and how the controllers like, so Saudi Arabia is our allies, and they're the second largest producers of billions of oil barrels. Do you see how this goes? You're talking about, it's almost like, again, people talking about not playing chess. I mean, not playing checkers, but chess. No, people are playing Calto. Oh, some people that know what Calto is know what I'm talking about. They play chess. Yeah, that's fine. But we play a whole different version of chess, right? Out there that most people have no clue about, right? This is the difference, right? That most people don't get. There are so many, well, no, let me phrase that. There is only a certain amount of true supremacists out in this globe. Only a certain amount of true supremacists in the US that controls the people that it seems to be they're controlling, but they're not. Again, Venezuela, the number one oil reserve basically producer with 303 billion barrels. Saudi Arabia, 2067, again, plus or minus, billions barrels, oil barrels. Iran, right? Countries with the largest oil reserve in 2025, billion barrels. Iran, 209, right? Canada, and you certain people present day are still trying to, go off on Canada, right? By the way, and Iraq. Remember Iraq? We talking about, right? Saddam Hussein, right? People that know. Oh my goodness, he tried to look what he's doing to Iraq people, the weapons of mass destruction, and then people found out and stuff like that. There was no weapons of mass destruction, but at the same time, they had still have a major oil reserve. You don't see this stuff, right? Afghanistan, oh my goodness, right? Osama bin Laden, look what he did on the 9/11. Got way over there. Even though people that know and stuff like that he had been trained by certain other people, I'm not going all that, right? I would not go on all that. But the whole point is, it's interesting that this one little person way over there that was supposed to be in Afghanistan, right? Orchestrated some of the most, besides Pearl Harbor, that some of the most treacherous terrorism type things that happen in America, right? Especially within this modern day, is September 11th situation, right? 2001, right? And it's interesting, but at the same time, Afghanistan, that they want to see what's going on in Afghanistan, right? You see how this goes. Oh, he got a little out of hand, right? Thought he's going to be a major player, and he got his reminded, right? But again, Saddam Hussein is right. Iraq, he was the president of Iraq, right? Knock off Iraq back in the 1990s, right? So there it goes. UAE, a major producer of oil. Kuwait, when Saddam Hussein was in there, was trying to get some Kuwaiti oil, right? And however, section out controls in the U.S. saying, I don't think so, Saddam. And what did they sit there do? Again, sit there and took out Saddam Hussein, right? Who's Iraq president. And Kuwait, oil, U.S. entities got some Kuwaiti oil. And Russia, ain't that the big bad barrel too? Russia, remember? Oh my goodness, Russia, no, we got to do something for Russia. Russia's like, you ain't finna come attack us like that. But in the interesting world, Russia in World War II was also an ally of the United States. You see how these game goes, right? The United States, right? Top 10 producer of oil reserves. And look at Libya. Now you start talking about talking about Obama, right? Libya, a major oil producer too, he got taken out. You don't see this stuff. They put stuff right in our faces and act like that. Oh, those people don't see what we're gonna do. What these people don't see. Those people don't see. Oh, well, these people are brilliant. Again.
I don't believe this is happening. Only fools refuse to believe truth.
I think we don't have too many more things left. What I want to show here. I think I did show this. Maybe I did show this already. If I did, no, I did show the Iran. I think I showed the Iran thing already. If I did, I'm gonna show a few people. I think I did. Yeah, I did. But let me continue with some of the Iran part.
The demonstrations began peacefully on December 28th, sparked by public outrage over runaway inflation and the steep collapse of the local currency against the US dollar, which has also lost nearly 80% of its value compared to a year ago. It does not come as a surprise that Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, has now adopted a hardline stance, warning that rioters should be put in their place. Meanwhile, India has advised its nationals to avoid non-essential travel to Iran until further notice, owing to the recent developments in the country. The advisory issued by the Ministry of External Affairs read, and I quote here, Indian citizens and PIOs currently in Iran should exercise due caution, avoid areas of demonstrations, and closely monitor news as well as the website and social media handles.
Right? Destabilize. Right? Trying to destabilize Iran, right? To try to get in Iran. Remember, Iran's the top also oil producer. So you knock off, so the U.S. entities, right? It ain't Black Americans. Black Americans don't have the power. They're not going to other countries, destabilizing people's countries. Huh? But at the same time, they want Black Americans, numbers of Black Americans, to jump up and down about different things on this situation.
I don't believe this is happening. Only fools refuse to believe truth.
Telling you, man, the game is tight. Now you got all these different things going on toward Black Americans. Again, not just by certain ones, people within certain parts of Panamanian culture who've had centuries of anti-American Black terrorism, anti-American Black terrorism toward Black Americans, and then ingrained and instilled with denial. We're talking about the ones it applies to, which is not going to be a small number of personnel within Panamanian culture, by the way. Then you got to deal with white adjacent ones, right? Certain type of Hispanicism. Who know they are, right? Look at this situation right here. Let the Negro fight his own battles. His problems are not mine. I don't want to ally with him. Felix Terragina, white Mexican-American president of LULAC, 1956 to 1960. So Black Americans still got to deal with hateful certain type of Hispanics, right? White Hispanics, should we say. And who are the top Hispanics that are immigrationists are in America? Mexicans. And there are some hateful freaking Mexicans toward Black Americans, just like some other certain section of other Hispanics one applies to, right? Black Americans got to deal with that kind of situation, right? Give me a second here. I want to sit there and show you something else for a moment here. Give me one moment here. Just like this right here. Give me one moment. What's the other one? Give me one moment here. Right here.
People, say what you said again. Black people secured their freedoms after the Civil War. It is a historical fact, Don. Just study it. Only after their Second Amendment rights were secured.
They were not secured their freedoms after the Civil War. That is not, you are discounting Reconstruction. You're discounting a whole host of things that happened after the Civil War when it comes to African Americans, including the whole reason that the civil rights movement happened is because Black people did not secure their freedoms after the Civil War, and that things turned around. People tried to change the freedoms that were supposed to happen.
And you know how they got it? They got their Second Amendment rights, and they actually got, the NRA played a big role in that. But today, Don, the NRA
did not play a big role in that.
Absolutely, they trained Black Americans how to use firearms.
That's a lie. That's not.
Do you see this? This white Asian Indian, right? He smells white Indianness, right? Got benefit off of black pain, right? Slid under the black banner, right? This freaking allowed tetheringness to black Americanism, right? Again, with his hateful self. You see how this goes. He's going to sit there and tell black Americans that black Americans got their rights based upon the Second Amendment, where black Americans were basically banned. They want to ban black Americans from sitting there having firearms. Is this fool crazy? In the 60s, when you had the Black Panther type people, and you start talking about the Deacons of Defense, and you got other people that want to sit there and bear arms that's supposed to be the Second Amendment of the Constitution, and you had people, right, within various parts of Panamanian culture that did not want black Americans to defend themselves and are having the Second Amendment right to bear arms. And this fool, who he's not even that old, Vivek, right? He's a white Indian, right? His parents fled, right? Again, allowed to come to America, right? To slot under a generic minority, people of color, marginalized communities, right? See how that goes, right? You see how this game goes. Now, the other person left side don't even sit there and talk about black American issues like that, right? So we're not going to go into him talking about stuff, right? Just trying to slide and play black when he wants to play black games, right? So you got all these different things going on toward black Americans, but black Americans, again, are supposed to be the most openest people and supposed to be like, oh my, what's going on in Ukraine? We got to help the Ukrainians. Oh my goodness, what's going on toward various parts of Africa when you got various parts of Africans that don't care about Africans, right? There's no Pan-Africanism, but black Americans are supposed to romanticize about Africa, right? Oh my goodness, look what they're doing to certain type of Mexicans. Even though you got numbers of Mexicans showing anti-black American racism. You had I think it was the LA City Council, LA City, somebody up there, I forgot what her name was, right? A little white Hispanic up there who was caught on tape with her other little minion, white Hispanics, anti-American black hatred on tape, spearing out anti-black Americanism, right? But black Americans are supposed to sit there and be the openest toward Hispanicism, no matter who they are. Right, even though it's Afro-Hispanics, get treated like third or fourth class in various parts of across their border, Mexico and some other places. Right, you see how this game goes. Right? I mean, this stuff is so ridiculously when you see through it stuff, man. Let me show this right here. Now, when we was talking about Iraq on that. Give me a second here. Make sure you can see that. Make sure you can see that.
Everyone's focus fell on the statue of Saddam.
Will you bring this statue down?
The Americans brought in a tank recovery vehicle. One over-exuberant Marine couldn't resist a bit of flag-waving patriotism first. The stars and stripes were taken down and replaced by the Iraqi flag. Then the moment of history. Saddam's regime could finally be said to be at an end.
There it goes.
Everyone's focus fell on the statue of Saddam.
And what's going on in Iraq right now, right? Still destabilization going on in Iraq right now, right? But you saw the people in that video. Oh, yay, down with Saddam Hussein. Do you not see history repeating itself, people? The games is ridiculous. But remember when I read you earlier, 1928, from the book Propaganda by Edward Bernays, 1928, Propaganda in the book. In the first few sentences, the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government which is the true ruling power of our country.
I don't believe this is happening. Only fools refuse to believe the truth.
Only fools refuse the truth on that. Let me see what I want to play next. I don't have too much more here on. Give me a second here. Let me see something here on. Played that one already. I think it was one other thing I want to show. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. One more after this one. And this is going to be a good one. What did it say? The real reason Venezuela matters.
Actually, no. Now, Donald Trump is insisting that the main reason he's interested in Venezuela, the main reason the US is kind of looking at tankers off the coast of Venezuela comes back to drugs, the trade, the smuggling of illegal drugs out of Venezuela. But what if it's not just that? Maybe there's something else going on. What if it's partly about oil? Now, on the surface, you might be thinking, why does America even need Venezuelan oil? And I can kind of understand your point, because if you look at just total oil production, look, this is up until 2005, the US was there, Venezuela was there, Saudi Arabia was there. But as you probably know, since then, everything has changed. Look.
And remember, he said, don't let them go fast. He said 2005. I've already then showed you the basic updated situation where who again? Venezuela is the number one, right? Number one producers. Then you got what? Saudi Arabia. And number three, Iran. And what does a certain section of U.S. control entities are trying to do? They're trying to sit there and take over Iran. For what again? Oil.
American output has gone through the roof, way above Saudi Arabia, And Venezuela has gone basically to the floor. And that's kind of post-Chavez, Maduro. They're one of the minnows now, I think 21st biggest producer in the world. So, again, that question, why should America care? Well, in the US, that big rise is largely down to this. It's down to the shale revolution. So you've got fracking all around the US producing extraordinary amounts of crude oil. And here's where we get to the interesting bit. Because when you're thinking about crude oil, maybe you're just thinking about, well, look, barrels of oil. It's all the same, isn't it? Well, actually, no. So if you kind of look at crude oil, there are various different types of crude in different parts of the world. There's actually kind of various different ways you can categorize it. But one way you can look at it is look at the kind of density. So you're basically looking at how thick that crude is. And when I say thick, I mean literally how thick. This is showing you global production broken down by the density of that oil. And so you've got the kind of medium stuff. And this is probably, if you've got kind of image in your mind of what crude oil looks like, it's a bit like this, it's kind of black, but it's not too viscous, it flows around. But there's other stuff as well. So this is light crude. And it kind of almost looks like a smoothie, doesn't it? And that's the same stuff. This is still crude oil, but down to the kind of geological and the biological conditions in the ground when it was being formed, hundreds of millions of years ago, it comes out looking a bit different. And so that's light. You've also got heavy stuff. And it's kind of relatively small in global production, but this is gloopy, super viscous stuff, heavy oil. So heavy, medium, light. Remember that. And remember also the key thing here is you get it out of the ground, it may look like that, but ultimately you still need it to go into, someone's car, or indeed, be turned into chemicals. Basically, you need to process it. And that processing, that happens in places like this, in refineries. And there are refineries all over the world, of course. There are refineries all over the US as well. There's kind of more than 100 of them. And if we kind of look at where those refineries are, well, so there's some in California. So the history in America, actually, historically, a lot of the early Californian oil, that was the heavy, gloopy stuff. And if you look at kind of some of the refineries in America, so here are some of the refineries. There's one in LA there. These are the 10 biggest. You've got some up here around kind of towards Canada. That we'll kind of come to that in a second. But a lot of them are down there, kind of Texas, Louisiana, on the coast. And here's the critical thing. These refineries are primarily set up for heavy oil, for taking that gloopy stuff and turning it into gasoline and all of the other different products. But here's where things get interesting. And remember that chart I showed you a moment ago, the one which showed kind of shale oil and how it kind of went through the roof. The oil that's generally produced with shale oil, the fracking oil, that comes out of the ground mostly in the light form. So it's the smoothie. It's sometimes actually even clear. It comes out of the.
And a lot of times we have not been taught that part. When we think about oil, we just see a certain look of oil, right? But this is a good educational type part.
Clear rather than black. And that's the majority. It comes out of the ground clear form. So it's the smoothie. It's sometimes actually even clear. It comes out of the ground clear rather than black. And that's the majority of American production right now. Shale oil tends to be light stuff. And actually that's kind of going back 10 years. Look at where we are now. Look at those bars. In the last few years, the amount of light oil being produced in the US has gone up and up and up, and the amount of kind of heavy stuff has gone down. But back to those refineries. They need to be fed. If America's going to have gasoline, it needs to feed those refineries with heavy oil. So if you look at the kind of imports coming into America in recent years, even though America is producing so much oil, more oil than it's ever produced before, it still needs to suck in loads of oil from overseas. And the type of oil we're talking about, it used to be, it's mostly heavy crude. It used to be only 12%. So only 12% of imports were heavy, gloopy crude. Now, it's about 70%. So 70% of the oil coming into America, which it needs to basically keep its economy going, is heavy crude. And where does heavy crude come from? Well, here are some of the big countries where you find most of it. It's Canada and Venezuela.
I don't believe this is happening. Only fools refuse to believe the truth.
Does it not get more clearer than this? So when you got people that surface conversation to one suppliers to talking about, oh my goodness, you got numbers of Venezuelans in the streets and they are parading around and being happy and stuff like this, and
I don't believe this is happening. Only fools refuse to believe the truth.
but they're not going to tell you or talk about the no Venezuelans that are not happy whatsoever, regardless of how this played out, where you have some controllers within U.S. and however other people behind the veil that came together saying, look, man, oil is what we need. And you saw what that guy was in there showing. The majority of the oil that is basically needed is the crude oil. And who are one of the largest also within the Americas is what? Canada and Venezuela. Venezuela being number one regardless. We've already showed that already. The graph that showed the number one, the top three, right, oil reserves, right, produced. We've already showed that already. On that, we already showed that already. Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and then Iran. Check mark Venezuela, right? See how that goes, right? Get rid of Maduro, right? Accuse him of narco, drugness, and importing and stuff like that. Check mark that off. But at the same time, this is why they know, especially within certain parts of Black Americanism, that are told every day to get over the past and don't worry about history. While other people talking about the history, the people, and this is documented proof, especially in those 90s, right, where you're talking about super stop and frisk, that was tearing up the sectionality of American places, especially on certain parts of the Eastern Coast, right, when you had bad seeds were at the apex of doing wrong things to Black Americans, but not paying attention to nobody else like that, right? This week, I'm going all that, but it's been proven that Harvard system puts certain drugs, especially crack cocaine, in certain sections of America, Black American, right, and got certain ones hooked up because the majority wasn't getting hooked like that, but still the mentality or how it was blurred out. This is why you start hearing about just say no to drugs, right? This is where you start hearing that in those 80s, just say no to drugs. So parts of the 80s, parts of the 90s, it was instrumental, and it was documented that certain sections of controllers were putting crack cocaine and getting them with the Black Americans hooked up and stuff like that, and turn around and lock them up in prison, right? Just like certain parts of marijuana. which is, I don't want to go, that's a whole different topic in itself, which is an insult, right? Because who are the number one personnel who own a lot of these weed distilleries? Non-blacks, mostly going to be Anglos, right? And maybe mixed in with some immigration type personnel. But who are the number one personnel who were locked in prison for using a little bit of medicinal weed, ganja, right? Mary Jane, those different names they were called, weed, right? What's the harming people like that? Black Americans were not harming people like that. The ones that were using a little bit of weed, and it was for medicinal purposes for most of the time. And Black Americans are getting locked up in prison behind that. And look now, a generation or so later, right now, I'm gonna say something because that's a different topic. Now you're talking about however knows, because now it's super beneficial and it makes a lot of money for a number of the personnel within certain sections of the Panama-based culture with these weed distilleries, but their quietness on demanding political figures sitting there and say, wait a minute, these numbers of Black Americans that have been locked up, and some of them may be still locked up for a certain situation relating to weed, or they put up some other charges, wherever it is. But we're talking about numbers of Black Americans who were locked up behind weed, got records for sitting there smoking a little medicinal weed. You get the point, right? Those same people within various parts of predominant culture that are benefiting off of weed distilleries, using weed and stuff like that, you know, and they're parameterizing to say is for medicinal purposes, right? But Black Americans were also predominantly using weed for medicinal purposes. Even majority of Blacks have not used weed, which them overall. But the majority of people being put in prison for weed was Black Americans who were using it for medicinal purpose overall. You see how this game goes. But the people I'm talking about, these own these various types of weed distilleries, these various non-Blacks, they're not demanding political personnel saying, look, we need to sit there and expunge any Black American that have been locked up for weed situations. No, that needs to be expunged left and right. Nope. You see how this goes, right? You see the hypocrisy going on in so many different areas Black Americans got to consistently deal with. And the last thing I want to sit there and show today, again, is December the 5th, 2026. Tomorrow being January 6th, 2026, only a few years ago, on January 6th, 2020, January 6th, 2021, only a month or so after the 2020 election, that you have personnel that were acting like anarchists, Anglo-anarchists, that they actively participated in anarchy and what could have been a major terroristic outcome by these numbers of Anglo-anarchists who went into the Capitol building and was tearing up different things like that. And how many of them sit there and got pardoned? Do you see the insulting of that? You're talking about what could have been, again, a major terrorism situation. No other recent time in history. I mean, you got to go back into British times, right? When they were sitting there, trying to go back into America and retake back over. That was you talking about 1800s people, right? 1700s, should we say as well, right? British trying to take control of what became United States of America, but it was British colonies, and you got numbers of what we call, colonial colonists. They weren't even American colonists; they was colonists. Immigration, by the way, hint, hint. And then they became what? Basic Anglo-Americans. But Black Americans are told they're not supposed to have their own unique culture. They're supposed to just say American, right? Even though Black Americans are not an immigration group. Black Americans did not immigrate over to America. Black Americans became the most powerful historical power history, magnificent history in America, became Black Americans. No other culture in America can sit there and say that. But how many have benefited off of Black Americans, especially taking the kindness for weakness of Black Americans collectively? right? But getting back to this last video, this is just a few minutes of this particular Capitol riot footage, right? January 6, 2021, right? 2020 election came up. You had Howard personnel that was, should we say, putting out information that there might have been, the election of Biden, that could have been some fraud. Oh, by the way, it's a whole different topic because there has been fraudulentousness. It don't even take you got people that have sit there, and that shows naiveness, right? If one vote is fraudulent, if 2 or 3 votes are fraudulent, that's still fraudulent, right? Don't let people minimize that situation. You think Black Americans can go across that border to Mexico when they have elections and sit there and be a border breaker, a legal immigrant in somebody else's country and demand a vote? Do you think that's going to happen? Do you really think that's going to happen? If a Black American is not a citizen of Mexico, which is not going to be a smattering of demographics of Black Americans being Mexican citizens, because Harvard, they ain't going to allow that like that. But have no problem with sitting there Mexicans, the ones that are breaking immigration laws and other certain types of Hispanics and the various types of African immigration personnel that break immigration laws. You also got some Haitians breaking immigration laws. You got some certain parts of the European personnel breaking immigration laws. Various people break immigration laws every day. But again, but Black Americans are supposed to be the footstool of jokes, right? Because the inside joke, hey man, just sit there and smile in front of Black people's faces, Black American faces, and they'll be your friends. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Right? And we're gonna benefit off Black Americans because we just come over here breaking border immigration laws, but we know that Black Americans can't come to our country that we fled from like little cowards and like little cowards, right? And again, I'm not talking about some of the good people that, hey, they came up to America, situations going on. We're not talking about those few. Those are small amounts. We're talking about a collective that flee from their countries, right? To sit there and don't know nothing about real American history, don't know nothing about true Black American history, right? Which they think is bad version of hip hop and use the N-word left and right, right? So that goes. But again, the last video, if Black Americans on January 6, 2021 were to sit there and show the terrorism anarchists and went to the Capitol and broke into the Capitol like terrorists, right? And was pushing Capitol police around, right? And there was a white Anglo woman that got shot and unalive. She was being an anarchist. And you got people that lost her mind, right? Oh my goodness, she didn't deserve that. She was participating in an anarchist. Now, if that had been, do you realize if that had been a Black American woman, do you think even half a second various sections of personnel within Padama's culture would have cared anything about that? And various other people? No, they would be saying, look at those Black Negro animal monkeys. They always complain about racism. And look at them. They went into the Capitol, our headquarters for legislating laws. Look at them. Oh, it would have been open season extra on Black Americans. But when numbers of personnel within Padama's culture and predominantly Anglo males who were doing this and numbers of Anglo women doing that, you act like people didn't see nothing. Do you see this? So let me go ahead and play.
Riot warning. Going to try and get compliance, but this is now effectively a riot.
49 hours declaring it a riot.
5 to 50 be advised, Cal Police 1 advised they're trying to breach and get to the Capitol.
We have a breach of the Capitol. Breach of the Capitol.
Do you already said breach of the Capitol? What did I say? Wednesday, January 6, 2021. They're inside the Capitol acting like racial terrorism. You see mostly Anglo males. And there are a few enough numbers of Anglo females breaking inside the U.S. Capitol, the headquarters of lawmaking. Do you not realize, again, if the capital enforcement people would have been Anglo-ness, and the primary 99.99% and anarchists, terrorists would have sit there and been Black Americans would have been mowed down. Do you see how this goes? But they're all numbers of ones within the Panamanian culture. It's almost like a generational agreement. You do no harm to other Anglo personnel, no matter what. It's even when this terrorism like this happens, you overall understand you better not commit any acts of terrorism back or any acts of protectionality against anarchist numbers of Anglo personnel. It don't matter. Don't you ever do that. Do you understand that? It's almost programmed.
Breach of the Capitol!
Oh, hold on. Let's go back. Look at that flag. Confederate flag, which is a symbol of hatred. But they'll tell Black Americans that ain't got nothing to do with hatred when it has to do with hatred. Do you understand how crazy it is? And they laugh at numbers of Black Americans, the one they believe this stupid, idiotic tactic saying this Confederate flag is not a Confederate flag, and it's not hatred. When the KKK will use this flag, other types of Anglo-racial terrorism groups toward American Blacks will utilize this Confederate flag. They utilize that flag in the Civil War times, use that flag in Deep South, utilize that flag in various parts going on anyway, it's been used in so many places within America. Still is right now in 2026. Confederate flag is flown in various places in America. Right? And it's not shown as a symbol of hatred. But you better not sit there and have a swastika, right? You're gonna be called anti-Semitic, even though that swastika, what we know now, has nothing to do with Nazism, had nothing to do with Hitler. People we don't care what you say, that's anti-Semitic, right? But Black Americans call that flag, Confederate flag, hate symbol. That shows you, unfortunately, how dwindled the strongness within American Blackism has dwindled to allow people to dictate what is right in front of our faces.
We need to hold the doors of the Capitol. I need court support. We lost the line. We lost the line. All MPDs get back. All MPDs get back up to the upper deck. All MPDs get back to the upper deck.
They were peaceful people. These were great people. The crowd was unbelievable. And I mentioned the word love, the love in the air. I've never seen anything like it.
Look at that. Look at that. But if Black Americans were doing that, man, I'm not going to try to fathom the type of animosity, anti-American Black hatred that have been going on toward Black Americans, not by just ones within the Panamanian culture, but white adjacent ones, various types of immigration personnel. You got ones that are fleers, ones that are tethering, You have ones black-skinned that cosplay Black Americans, somebody wants supplies to. The list would have been on, because you're talking about this was globally seen, majorly, because no other time, really American history, besides the British time, when he was trying to retake back basically what became America, right? No other time had this happened in Anarchist type terrorism situation. And you just had that in the 21st century, January the 6th, 2021. This is 2026, people. This is only a few years ago. And this sister knows that many people got forgetful memories. And I'm not talking about because of health situations. But at the same time, every day you got people talking about black on black crime, black on black crime. Well, the number of people who commit the most crimes, the person that was in the Paname's culture. The person who are the most DEI recipients is numbers of women within certain sections of the Paname's culture, throwing supplies to. The number of people who sit there and commit the giganticness of white collar criminality, which, by the way, affects a lot of people, by the way, is numbers of personnel within the Paname's culture, throwing supplies to. Also, white adjacent ones, too. Numbers of immigration personnel. It's not going to be a lot because the numbers are small regardless, but many of them are in there as well. You see how this goes. But they continue to keep sitting there talking about black folks, black Americans, left, right. And again, I'm not talking about coons and sellouts. And again, it's an insult, people. Because again, in closing, just like the situation with Venezuela, I'm not getting to feelings. Because assume not far after this, right, that'll dwindle down too, right? People can go back to what they're doing regardless. People can go back doing what they're doing. Today is January 1st, January 5th, 2026. You got people right now doing their own thing right now. Like people sitting there still suffering right now. There are people that are homeless. There are people losing jobs every day. People losing business every day. People getting sick every day. People in hospice every day. People got other different situation problems going on, right? But they want Black Americans collectively to be the openness and spokespersonnel for other people's problems. And Black Americans are the number one people who've had the most anti-crimes or anti-Black America, are the most personnel who've had the most criminality put upon them, but are expected to be the most openest people to other people's problems. You know that's a mental sickness.
I don't believe this is happening. Only fools refuse to believe truth.
I thank you for tuning in to the Real CP Show.